Hello out there! This is Toy Customizer Wakeangel2K1 bringing you another toy review. This is a toy from the Transformers animated line that I wanted for a long time and recently acquired. It is Blurr. Transformers animated Blurr. Okay, so here's his alt mode. It is a Cybertronian future car. I absolutely love this vehicle mode and everything about it. It looks like the Mach 5 from Speed Racer and the Tron Light Cycle had a baby, and this is the baby, and it is amazing and awesome, and I love every curve of it. The only flaw is something common among a lot of Transformers animated vehicles. It doesn't really have a rear. There's no bumper back there. Not street legal. Although at least his face is hidden, so this thing just kind of looks like a weird rear headlight assembly. Although if you rear-ended this guy, you're probably going to get your engine impaled. Alright, so for size comparison, here is Transformers Generations Drift. You see that the car is just about exactly the same length. Although Drift is a little bit taller, he has a little more height to him. The reason I brought Drift out is because that mold was used to make the Generations version of Blurr. So, you know, that's going to be one Blurr compared to the other Blurr. So what does Blurr do in this mode? Well, you push down his roof. Remember those Mach 5? When I compared this thing to the Mach 5, it kinda does the thing. The Mach 5 had the saw blades that came out the front, and this guy has a saw blade that comes out the front when you push down the hood. It's basically the Mach 5 by way of Tron. I seriously cannot stop loving this thing. This is one of my favorite vehicle modes that a Transformer has ever been in of all time. Okay, so enough gushing about the vehicle mode. Okay, so there is one flaw to the toy that I don't like, and it's a little piece of his transformation. The transformation's not completely ideal to me. See, the first step is to split open these two front fenders and pull the hood off so it can become the alt mode weapon. I've never been a fan of this kind of transformation. I do have a few other toys that do that, like the 2007 Movie Deluxe RC is one example. I don't like when a big chunk of the alt mode comes off to become the weapon, because if you put the weapon away somewhere or lose it, then your Transformer doesn't have a vehicle mode anymore. That looks pretty horrible. So, but really, that's the only major flaw in Blurr that I can see. I'm going to do the rest of the transformation off camera because you know, I get kind of clumsy in front of cameras. So let's see what he looks like in robot mode. And there it is, Blurr's robot mode. He is a very slim guy, isn't he? He has that runner's body. Very slick, very sleek, very nice looking. Minimal amount of kibble too. I think this part of the roof folded over his back is the only real kibble that's left over. He makes a very efficient use of all of his mass for the transformation. And aside from the fact that his hands aren't visible in profile, he cuts a really nice robot mode. Although I should mention there was one little thing. Let's get his arm down out of the way so I can zoom in and show you. Oh dear. Well, I can just move that out of the way. Alright, so let's zoom in on his neck. Okay, you see how his neck, it bends forward a bit so that the head can perch? It wasn't like that fresh out of when I first got it. I found out from a fellow toy customizer, Bad Lamprey, that there's a common factory assembly error with Blurr's where his neck piece is put in backwards, and it basically is all the way back like this, so it's very difficult to get Blurr standing naturally. So you have to take it out, turn the neck piece around, and then put it back on, and then it can take on a more natural alignment. The thing is that is an incredibly difficult thing to do because you have to knock out pins. It's something that you literally need to use a rather heavy hammer for. You have to take this pin out just to get access to his back, and then to undo some screws. Then you have to knock another pin out to get the neck out and turn it around. It's very dangerous, and amateur toy customizers shouldn't do it. But I'm going to link to Bad Lamprey's tutorial and the other tutorial from that I think it was Brentosaur. He does a video about how to fix pins. So if you have a Blurr and he has a neck that goes all the way back, so his chin can't take this natural pose, then you might want to do it. But you know, be warned, it's going to be a delicate task. Okay, so enough talking about the toy's assembly flaw. Let's go back to talking about the figure himself. Blurr is really well articulated in robot mode. You saw the expressive ball jointed head and the neck joint, so he can get a really good looking up pose. He has ball jointed shoulders, which are cool. He has a bicep swivel underneath that with a ball jointed elbow, which almost makes the ball jointed shoulder, the bicep swivel redundant, because the ball joint is so versatile in itself. I should mention I got this guy in an eBay auction for really cheap, and when I got him out of the envelope that he was sent in, I realized that he was so cheap because all of his ball joints were pathetically loose and floppy. He was like a rag doll, but I was able to tighten up all of his ball joints, and now he's good as new. He has a waist joint, yay, ball jointed hips, which have a good range. Knees bend 90 degrees, and he has a lot of joints here in his toe assembly, which is meant to make the rear headlight around the wheel, but it really gives him a nice. Oh, and he has a swivel for the transformation on his foot. Gives him a really nice footprint so that he can stand stably in all kinds of poses. You can even approximate running poses with this guy. And you know, running poses are something that you gotta love with Blurr, because one of the things he did in the series was when he couldn't get a signal to Cybertron, he ran back to give his report. He literally ran to Cybertron, because he is just that awesome. Okay, so let's talk about his weapon. I am not a big fan of Blurr's weapon. Whoop whoop. My stage is not very stable. Also, I didn't put his foot down properly. Come on. Stand, Blurr. Stand proud and tall. Alright, we'll talk about that later. So his weapon, yeah, you can deploy the saw blade. And he has holes on his hand. You peg it in like that. And then he has like a shield with a saw coming out of it. I don't really like it. It looks kind of ungainly. And it doesn't really look like the kind of weapon that Blurr would use anyway. I prefer to keep it down here like a shield. And unfortunately, the peg is like, it's not a 5mm peg. It's like a 3 or 4mm peg. So you can't put just any weapon in there, unfortunately. But yeah, like you can pretend when you hold it up like this that the reason his hand isn't revealed is because there's a gun in there and he's shooting out of it. If you don't want him to have the weapon at all, but you don't want to risk losing it, he has two pegs here on the back of the weapon and 2 peg holes on the underside of the roof, which you fold away. So you can just put those 2 pegs here on his back, and he has weapon storage. I mean, now he has a bit more of a backpack, but it's not too obtrusive. It's only really noticeable from the side, and it's a good way to keep the weapon out of the way and make sure you don't lose it, because remember, that weapon is a critical part of his alt mode and you really don't want to lose it. So, remember earlier when I wanted to show him off next to next to Drift because Drift was repainted as the Generations version of Blur. Let's get his other universe brother out here, shall we? So remember, this is Drift. This is Blur, standing up straight as he can. And let's bring in Drift. Out of fairness, he's going to be standing as stock straight as possible. So no leg splay or anything like that. This is as tall as Drift, and by extension the Generations Blur figure will ever get. And as you can see, Blur is tall. He is incredibly tall for a deluxe. I mean, he is totally head and shoulders taller than his Generations counterpart. I mean, look at that. The height difference is ridiculous. Even if you don't count the huge points on his shoulders, he's just really up there. I mean, he's very thin and gangly. He doesn't have a lot of mass, but he has height, man. He has height to spare. I mean, how tall is he? Well, for a comparison of a figure that's about the same size, here's Generation Springer, a Voyager class figure. Again, brought into as tall as his natural stance will allow. He is about the same height as Generation Springer, maybe just a little tiny bit shorter. I mean, this is a really tall figure. This is a deluxe that's almost as tall as a Voyager class. And that's one of the reasons why I really like this guy. He is, I always thought that it was the Transformers Prime toys that introduced pseudo-mass shifting with their deceptively large robot modes for their small vehicles, but it seems that Transformers Animated Blur sort of beat them all to the punch. And that's really cool. Yeah, so I really love this guy. This is one of my favorite animated figures now. And Transformers Animated was one of my favorite Transformers toy lines, so this guy's really up there, my favorite Transformers. So yeah, if you don't have an animated Blur, I would highly recommend tracking one down, because they don't make them like this very often. Alright, so this is Toy Customizer Wakeangel2K1 signing out.